Last month, I was covering a night shift at the hospital for a coworker. I needed the extra money, so I took it without hesitation. This place was big, built in the late 90s, and it always smelled like disinfectant. The lights flickered now and then, but I was used to it by now. I thought it would just be another long night. On my third shift, I started hearing soft voices coming from the break room. I figured it was my coworkers chatting, but when I peeked inside, the room was empty. I felt a chill creep up my spine. Was it my imagination? I tried to shrug it off. As the week dragged on, the whispers grew louder. I thought I heard my name being called. I looked around, feeling a tightness in my chest. I wanted to focus on my work, but that uneasy feeling wouldn't leave me. One night, I walked past the gurneys and could have sworn one moved slightly. My heart raced. I laughed it off. Maybe I was just overworked, but things kept getting weirder. One evening, while sorting patient files, I noticed a few records were missing. It made me uneasy, but I couldn't figure out why. I had to know what was going on. Around midnight the voices returned. This time, they came from down the hall. Cold sweat coated my back. I approached the dark hallway and thought I saw shadows move. My breath hitched. I really wasn't alone. I kept telling myself it was in my head. Maybe I needed sleep? I focused on tasks, but the whispers were a constant distraction. My shift felt exhaustive. One night, standing at the nurse's station, my heart pounded. The lights flickered again. I felt a shiver down my spine. "Jess," a voice called out, clear and desperate. I froze. I scanned the empty hallway. My skin prickled. Was it a former patient? I didn't want to find out. The feeling of being watched grew heavy on my chest. Then one night, while checking on a patient, the door slammed shut behind me. I gasped, turning around. The room was empty. My mind raced. This couldn't be real. I stumbled into the hallway, breathless and shaken. I heard it again. "Jess." My heart pounded. I twirled around, but no one was there. No friendly face or reassuring voice. I didn't know what to think. Was it just my mind messing with me? Or did those voices belong to souls who had passed? I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. That night, I rushed to finish my shift. The buzzing lights and empty hallways felt alive. I couldn't relax. The whispers felt thicker in the air. Hours later, I clocked out, my hands shaking. I still think about what happened. Did I hear voices that night? I don't have answers. And every night since, I wonder if I'll go back. The answers are still out there, calling my name. The following week, I found myself staring at the hospital schedule again. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I told myself I wouldn't return. But the extra money was tempting. I should listen to my gut, but I chose to go in anyway. That first night back felt different, almost charged. I sat at the nurse's station, trying to focus on the pile of reports. But my eyes kept darting to the darkened hallway. Every time the lights flickered, my breath caught. I could feel that familiar tension creeping back into my chest. Around midnight, the whispers began again. This time, they were louder, more frantic. "Jess, come here." I stiffened. It sounded like a plea. I tried to ignore it, pressing my fingers tightly against the keyboard. But I couldn't. The whispers drew me in. I stood up, my legs trembling beneath me, and walked toward the source. The hallway was dimly lit, the fluorescent lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. I squinted, half expecting to see a figure at the end. "Jess," the voice called again, soft but urgent. I stepped forward, compelled to find out what was happening. That S when the lights flickered violently, and then went dark. For a moment, I was surrounded by blackness, the only sound was the pounding of my heart. I fought the urge to panic. Just when I thought I would turn back, I noticed a faint glow coming from one of the patient rooms. Hesitant but curious, I crept toward it. When I reached the door, it was slightly ajar. I pushed it open slowly. Inside, the light flickered, revealing a figure sitting on a bed. I squinted, trying to make sense of it. It was a woman, her features pale and ghost-like, her eyes wide with an intensity that froze me in place. "Help me," she whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf. My breath caught in my throat. "Who are you?" She pointed toward the corner of the room. "Please, they won't let me go." I felt a rush of dread curl in my stomach. I knew I should run, but something held me there. I stepped inside the room, my heart racing. The door creaked as it swung further open. When I caught sight of something unsettling, a shadowy figure standing in the corner, watching us. "Jess." The voice came from the shadows, echoing around me. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to flee, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Suddenly, the lights blinked back on, illuminating the room in harsh fluorescent light. The woman was gone. I stumbled back, my heart racing even faster. And then I heard it again, the soft, intimate whisper of my name, now filled with a sense of urgency. "Jess, you have to help." Something snapped inside me. I turned and bolted from the room, my mind racing, questions swirling like a storm. Was I losing it? What did she mean by they? I fled down the hallway, adrenaline pushing me forward. I needed answers. The clock was ticking, and the whispers were getting louder. And now, I was more entangled in this mystery than I ever wanted to be. The shadows seemed to close in as I ran, and I knew I would have to confront whatever was haunting the hospital. I just hoped I was ready for it. I stumbled into the break room, gasping for air. I pressed my back against the cool wall, my mind racing. The whispers didn't stop. They slithered around me like smoke, relentless and accusing. "Help her, Jess. You have to help." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog. My pulse thudded in my ears. I was scared, but I couldn't ignore it. I needed to know what was happening. Suddenly, the fluorescent lights above flickered again, and I felt my stomach drop. I hesitated, staring at the door that led back to the hallway. The voices were stronger now, echoing like a distant song in my brain. I had to go back. I had to find out more. As I stepped back into the corridor, shadows danced along the walls. The hum of the hospital's machines filled the air, a stark contrast to the chilling whispers. I walked slowly, trying to regain my courage. The hallway seemed longer, darker than before. Each step felt heavy. Then I noticed something on the floor. It was a small piece of paper, crumpled and nearly hidden in the dim light. I bent down to pick it up, my fingers trembling. Unfolding it, I saw a name scrawled across it, Emily Carter. I remembered hearing that name before. She was a patient who had been admitted months ago, but I didn't know many details. My gut twisted as I realized that maybe she was the woman whose ghost I had seen. I pocketed the note, determination bubbling inside me. I needed to find answers, to learn more about Emily Carter. Maybe there was something in her history that could help me understand the whispers and the shadowy figure. I headed toward the nurse's station, resolved to dig through patient records. As I walked, I saw the darkened room I had just fled. A shiver ran through me, but I pressed on. I felt the pull of the whispers urging me deeper into the mystery, telling me I couldn't turn back now. When I reached the nurse's station, the monitors displayed a steady rhythm that seemed to beat in time with my racing heart. I glanced around to ensure no one was watching before I slid behind the desk and flipped through the files. Emily Carter's file was easy to find. I pulled it out and opened it, scanning for anything that hinted at her story. Pages filled with Dr. S. notes and treatment plans. But one thing caught my eye, a note from the psychiatrist. It mentioned her claims of hearing voices and seeing shadows long before she was admitted. My heart sank. What had happened to her? Had the hospital failed her? Just then, a chill swept through the room. I turned slowly, instincts heightening. "You have to help," the voice seemed to swirl around me. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, plunging me back into a darkness that felt smothering. I felt a presence behind me, something cold and unnerving. My stomach dropped. "Who's there?" I whispered, fear gripping me. Then I heard it, a soft cry echoing through the darkness, rising and falling like a mournful lullaby. I felt a mix of dread and urgency. I knew I had to confront whatever awaited me in the shadows. But now, as I stood in eerie silence, I also realized this was only the beginning. And I wasn't prepared for what was about to unfold. The shadows shifted again, and I felt an almost electric tension in the air. My heart raced unpredictably. I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment, hoping it would somehow block out the terrifying presence. Just calm down, Jess, I whispered to myself. But the murmur of voices wrapped around me, insistent and growing louder. I opened my eyes slowly, squinting into the darkness. A silhouette moved just beyond my line of sight, flickering like a candle in a draught. My breath caught in my throat as I instinctively stepped back. The files slipped from my grip, scattering papers across the floor. Panic surged inside me. Emily! The name escaped my lips unexpectedly. I hadn't meant to call out. But something about the air felt magnetic, urging me to reach out to the presence I now sensed just beneath the surface of this reality. Help her, find her, the voice repeated, a faint whisper that felt like a chill breeze against my ear. I felt drawn to it, as if the darkness was offering guidance. But to where? Then I glanced toward the nurse's station and saw a faint light flickering from one of the examination rooms down the hall. It pulsed rhythmically, as if it were alive. I knew I shouldn't investigate. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and run. Yet I was compelled to move toward it, my feet shifting forward. As I approached the room, the whispers faded into a tense silence. I peered through the small window in the door. Inside, I saw the outline of a figure hunched over on the floor. A flash of fear surged through me at the thought of confronting whoever or whatever was in there. With trembling hands, I pushed the door open, stepping inside. The light flickered brighter for a moment before it steadied, revealing the figure of a young woman with dark, tangled hair, her back facing me. She was slumped against the wall, her form almost ghostly in the dim illumination. Emily? I said cautiously, trying to keep my voice steady. She turned slowly, her face pale and drawn, eyes hollow. You shouldn't have come, she rasped, and an icy dread washed over me. I took half a step back, wanting to flee but anchored by the intensity of her gaze. Please, you have to help, she continued, her voice trembling as if she were struggling against invisible chains. They don't understand. They want to listen. Who want to? I asked, pushing back the clench of panic in my throat. I felt adrenaline coursing through my veins, and reality twisted around me. The dreams, the flashes of shadow, suddenly they felt far too familiar. But before she could respond, the lights flickered again, plunging us into darkness for the briefest moment. And when they returned, Emily was gone, leaving only the lingering chill and the echo of her plea hanging in the air. I stood frozen, heart pounding in my chest. I could hear my own breathing, louder than ever in the sudden quiet. Was she real? Had I imagined her? That was when I noticed something on the ground, a small silver bracelet, glinting in the low light. I bent down to pick it up, hoping it would offer some connection to the woman I'd just encountered. But as I grasped the cold metal, the whispers returned, sharper and more urgent. You have to help her. Find the truth. And just like that, the fear morphed into a sense of purpose. There was no turning back now. I was in deeper than ever, and I had to uncover the truth of what happened in this hospital. But I sensed the catch. I needed to figure out who the whispers belonged to. And that meant confronting whatever dark forces were lurking in the shadows. The next few moments felt like an eternity. The chill from Emily's presence lingered, and I tightened my grip on the bracelet. I needed answers, but fear had turned my legs to lead. With shaky breaths, I turned back toward the door, glancing down the hallway. It was eerily quiet, the shadows seeming to press closer. I stepped outside the examination room, fighting the urge to run. Instead, I forced myself to walk toward the end of the corridor. The whispers still echoed in my mind, but there was something different about them, urgency mixed with despair. I felt a need to find out who Emily was and what had happened to her. As I drew nearer to the nurse's station, a flickering light from the break room caught my eye. I hesitated for a moment, weighing the risk of investigating. But the whispers pulsed in my ears, pushing me onward. I entered the break room, my heart pounding. Inside, the atmosphere felt charged, as if the air was thick with unspoken words. A lone fluorescent bulb buzzed above, casting long shadows on the walls. A coffee pot sat on the counter, stale and cold. No one was there, but a chair scraped across the floor as if someone had recently stood up. I scanned the room for any clue, any sign that could lead me closer to Emily. Then something caught my eye, a clipboard resting on the table. It was dust-free, as if it had been used only moments ago. I picked it up, noting the notes, scribbled in a frantic hand. Patient 12B, disturbance repeats, help her. Consistent spike in vitals when mentioning family. Consider further observation. Patient 12B. The name felt like a key, unlocking a chest of memories. I closed my eyes and pictured the girl from the examination room. That must be her. But what did disturbance mean? I could feel the tension in the air as if whatever had happened was still hanging there, unresolved. Just then, the lights flickered again, and the air shifted. I turned around, nerves on edge, expecting Emily's ghostly figure to appear. Instead, I saw a shadow move through the doorframe beyond the break room. It was too tall and too quick to be human. "Who's there?" I called, adrenaline surging. There was no response. I hesitated. The urge to confront the source of the shadow was nearly overpowering. I took a deep breath and moved toward the door. As I stepped through, the hallway was empty, just a long, dark stretch lit by the dim emergency lights. I felt eyes on me, as if the darkness itself was watching. I pressed on, ready to uncover whatever secrets the hospital held. I had to find patient 12B. Then the lights went out completely, plunging me into a suffocating darkness. My heart raced as I fumbled for my phone, the cold metal of the bracelet now feeling like a lifeline. That's when I heard it, a soft crying, echoing down the hall. It was coming from somewhere close. I wasn't sure why, but I had to follow that sound. The crying grew louder as I moved cautiously down the darkened hallway. It was a heart-wrenching sound, filled with despair, and it pulled me forward like a magnet. I stayed close to the wall, my fingers brushing against the cold, sterile surface for support. Suddenly, a flicker of light flashed down the corridor. I froze, heart in my throat. It was gone as quickly as it came, but I felt drawn toward where it had appeared. I took a deep breath and pressed on, the sound of the crying starting to mingle with whispers that seemed to beckon me. "Help her," they said, each repetition sending a chill down my spine. I rounded a corner, and the faint glow returned, illuminating a small room at the end of the hall. I hesitated, anxiety clawing at my chest. What if it was a trap? What if it was Emily? I had to know. The door creaked as I pushed it open. The room was empty except for a single flickering bulb that cast irregular shadows. The crying was louder now, echoing off the walls. I stepped inside, my mind racing with questions. Why was I feeling this connection to someone I didn't even know? Then I noticed it, a small, old-fashioned mirror hanging on the wall. The frame was dusty, but something about it seemed off. I approached, the crying now coming from just behind the glass. My reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed and fearful. I reached out, my fingers trembling. That's when I saw her. Emily's face appeared in the mirror, pale and distorted. Her eyes were filled with tears, and her mouth formed silent words that couldn't reach my ears. I felt a rush of panic. Was this what had happened to her? A trapped soul, separated from her body? "Emily!" I yelled, my voice echoing back at me. I pressed my palm against the glass, feeling an odd warmth beneath my touch, as if there was life just on the other side. In an instant, the crying stopped. I blinked, and the reflection was gone. The room fell silent, the oppressive darkness closing in again. I stumbled back, adrenaline shooting through me. What just happened? Before I could gather my thoughts, I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut on its own. My breath hitched as I grasped the handle, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The shadows morphed, swirling around me as the whispers returned, now louder and more frantic. "Help her! Help her!" They filled my mind, drowning out all rational thought. Then I felt a coldness seep into the room, and I realized the shadows were not just watching, they were closing in. My heart raced as I searched for a way out. There had to be a reason for all of this, a clue among the chaos that could help both Emily and me. And then, above the whispers, I heard a new voice, clear and chilling. "You shouldn't have come here." I paused, dread pooling in my stomach. What had I stumbled into? The voice sent shivers down my spine. My instincts screamed at me to run, but the door was solid against my efforts. I could feel the shadows swirling around my feet, tightening the space, dragging me deeper into the tangible nightmare. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice trembling. Silence smothered the walls as if they were in on some dreadful secret. The darkness pulsed with weight, and I could feel cold fingers brush against my skin. I took a step back, urgency pushing me to search for another way out. With a rush of adrenaline, I let my hands graze the walls, hoping to find a hidden latch or a window. My fingers slipped over a rough surface and indentation. I pressed it and felt the walls shift slightly. I fought to suppress a gasp. It felt like hope, something tangible amid the encroaching shadows. Then I heard it again. "Help her!" The whisper surged forward like a tide, engulfing me. I closed my eyes, trying to drown them out. A deep breath grounded me as thoughts of Emily filled my mind. I had to get out, not just for me, but for her. I pressed against the wall in desperation, the coldness creeping up my arms, trying to anchor me down. With a grunt, I pushed harder on the indentation, and to my shock, the wall swung open, revealing a narrow shaft filled with sickly light. Sprinting toward the opening, I didn't care if I was leaping into more darkness. Anything was better than this room. I scrambled through and found myself in a twisting stairwell. Unlike the dim corridor, this one was flooded with fluorescent light that flickered like dying stars. I caught my breath, but it didn't last long. I heard footsteps echoing above me, heavy and deliberate. My heart raced as I glanced back at the opening. The whispers had trailed behind, now rising in a frantic crescendo. I climbed quickly, each step creaking under my weight. Why are they so desperate? I wondered, confused and frightened. Did they want me to help Emily or to trap me just like her? Suddenly I heard a crash from below, like something being thrown against the wall. I froze. An icy panic flooded my body. Something was coming for me. The footsteps grew clearer, echoing up the stairs, closer than before. I had to move. I reached the top door and flung it open, stumbling into a room stacked with old equipment. A chill ran through me as I surveyed my surroundings. Flickering monitors, old beds draped in plastic sheeting, remnants of lives once lived. That's when I saw it. A large glass panel dominated one wall, and behind it stood a figure cloaked in shadows, wearing an old hospital gown. My stomach twisted. It was Emily, or what was left of her. "Help me," she mouthed, eyes wide and pleading. But just as I stepped closer, the lights flickered ominously. The room began to shift, the walls constricting as if they were alive. "Get out!" Emily screamed silently as shadows coalesced behind her, darkening the glass. I gasped, realizing I had to choose. Help her or save myself. The figure began to fade, and I could feel the shadows on my heels. "Help me!" she cried again, the voice piercing through my resolve. I started to reach out, knowing that whatever happened next might change everything. But the darkness surged forward, hungry and relentless. In that moment, I understood, I might not be the one who needed saving after all. My hand hovered just above the glass panel, heart pounding in my chest. I was on the brink of making a choice that could seal my fate. Emily's form flickered like a dying flame, urging me forward. The shadows behind her choked the air, dark and invading. I could sense their hunger, a weight pressing against my back. Then, just as I was about to take a step towards her, a loud crash echoed from the stairwell. I whirled around, adrenaline flooding my veins as I faced the door I had just come through. Fear ignited within me, urging a singular thought: I couldn't let that darkness catch me. I didn't know what it would do, but I was sure it wouldn't be kind. I turned back to Emily. Her expression was twisted in desperation, her lips forming silent words I couldn't hear. Every instinct in me screamed to stay, to fight whatever was coming for us. But I knew I couldn't make it worse. I had to get out. With one last look, I sprinted toward the door at the far end of the room. As I reached for the handle, Emily's whisper sliced through the air, clear and desperate. "Please don't leave me." I hesitated, torn between my need to escape and the bond one felt with her. But the shadows surged behind me like a tidal wave. I yanked the door open and fled into the corridor just as darkness spilled into the room like a living thing, snaking around the doorframe. The fluorescents overhead buzzed erratically as I ran down the hallway, my footfalls echoing in the stillness. I momentarily lost track of where I was going. Panic blurred my mind. Emily's cries faded into the distance, and I wondered if it was my fault. Could I have saved her? At the end of the corridor, I saw another set of stairs. I climbed them two at a time, unwilling to look back. As I reached the next level, the air shifted. It was cold and damp, the scent of mildew thick enough to choke on. I realized this floor must be even older than the one below, abandoned and forgotten. I made my way cautiously down the hall, light flickering above like a metronome marking my heartbeat. Then I spotted something, a shadow moving at the far end of the corridor. My breath caught in my throat. It was slight, almost flickering like the lights above, but it was definitely there. A quiet whisper reached my ears, calling my name. Help me! It wasn't Emily's voice. It was something else. I stepped closer, drawn by the sound. The hallway stretched endlessly ahead, shadows dancing just beyond the light. Questions swirled in my mind. Who was this? Another tortured soul? Or something more dangerous? I was almost at the end when the door banged open behind me. My blood froze as heavy footsteps thundered down the stairs. I spun around. Time slowed as I faced the darkness rushing toward me. I could feel ancient malice radiate from it, and I realized it was more than just a physical threat. Whatever I felt crawling beneath my skin was rooted in something far older. I couldn't escape Emily's fate, and I couldn't abandon another. I had to find out who was calling me. I turned back toward the figure, my courage fueled by desperation. Then everything went dark. I awoke in a haze, disoriented and breathless. My surroundings shifted from shadow to light, revealing a sterile room filled with the scent of antiseptic and faint beeping machines. I was lying on a cold, white gurney, but the familiarity was agonizing. I had been here before. I shot up, scanning for any sign of danger. The walls were pale, almost blinding under fluorescent lights, but no one was there. No figures lurking, no Emily, no haunting whispers. The only sound was the quiet hum of machinery, a constant presence that made my skin prickle. What had happened? Had I fainted? I rubbed my temples, trying to piece together the fragments slipping from my mind. The last thing I remembered was rushing toward the shadow. But my thoughts were interrupted by a loud crash from behind. I turned, heart racing, to see a row of equipment topple over. It was no accident. Panic flooded back. I swung my legs off the gurney, but stumbled as I stood. My body felt heavy, weighed down by dread and confusion. I wouldn't stay here to find out what made that noise. I stumbled toward the door, but as my hand closed around the cold metal handle, I froze. The whisper returned, echoing softly in the back of my mind. Help me, no. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to feel that pull, but I was already moving without thinking. My legs carried me toward the source of the sound, deeper into the heart of the hospital, where I could feel something unholy waiting for me. As I turned a corner, the air thickened, and the whispers turned deafening, layered and chaotic. They drifted like fog, wrapping around my thoughts. Some were pleading, others were angry, accusing. It felt like a gallery of lost souls, trapped and suffering. Then I saw her. A figure shrouded in darkness, huddled in the corner of a room filled with flickering screens. Help me! The voice was clear, but it twisted in my gut. There was something familiar about it. Emily? I took a cautious step closer, hope mingling with fear. But instead of a comforting response, the shadows shifted violently, swallowing the light around her. I reached out instinctively, driven by a need to save her. In that moment, a new sound crashed through, heavy footsteps, deliberate and menacing. My heart pounded as I realized I wasn't alone. Whatever was approaching had a purpose, and it was aimed at me. I couldn't focus. The shadows and the whispers clawed at my mind, drowning out everything else. I had to make a choice, confront the ominous figure in front of me or flee from the oncoming threat. When I saw it, a door ajar behind Emily. Unfamiliar and beckoning, it held a sliver of light that cut through the encroaching dark. A desperate thought splintered through my mind. Maybe safety was just beyond that threshold. But I took a breath, prepared to go toward the darkness one last time. I had to know what was happening. I couldn't run anymore. Not this time. I pushed forward through the chaos and trembling shadows, my heart pounding in unison with the frantic whispers that seemed to shake the very structure of the hospital. "Help me!" Emily's voice echoed in my ears, and I felt the desperate weight of it tugging at my resolve. I couldn't abandon her. The shadows shifted, coiling and stretching, forming a swirling silhouette that blocked the flickering lights. I stepped closer to Emily, my breathing shallow. "I'm here," I called, forcing down the rising panic. "What do you need me to do?" But the darkness retreated slightly, and instead of Emily, I saw the full shape of a man stepping forward, his face obscured. The room trembled with his presence, a looming entity that felt like pure malice. "Leave her alone!" I shouted, the defiance catching me by surprise. I didn't even know who I was challenging. Shadows danced around the figure, converging toward him like moths to a flame. I had to act fast. If this shadow wanted Emily, it wouldn't stop until it got her. I glanced at the door behind Emily, the light pulling me toward it like a secret promise of safety. Could I make it? The air thickened with tension, the whispers pushed and pulled on my mind harder than ever before, threatening to drag me down into despair. "Emily!" I shouted again, making a final choice. I sprinted toward the half-open door, praying it would lead me somewhere, anywhere but here. I felt the chill of the darkness at my back, but I refused to look back. I was too close now. Just as I reached for the door handle, I felt a force slam into my chest, nearly knocking the breath from my lungs. "Help me!" Emily cried out once more, desperation slicing through the chaos. I turned my head back and saw her figure still enveloped in shadows, grasping at my retreating form, her eyes wide with a pleading intensity. I hesitated. What if I could rescue her? In that split second, I felt something icy grip my mind, urging me to choose between Emily and my own survival. I pulled away at the very last moment, the dark figure lunging but finding only empty air. I didn't know what I had unleashed by running, but I couldn't look back. I flung myself through the door and collided into the room beyond. The fluorescent lights flickered into life, illuminating rows of old beds and scattered medical instruments. My feet pounded against the floor as I instinctively looked for an exit, my breath heavy with fear. But as I glanced back, I was confronted with a strange realization. The door I had just run through swung shut behind me, sealed by an unseen force. The shadows receded, fading into the corner as if keeping their distance, but Emily's voice was still hauntingly present. "Help me!" I felt nauseous. The whirling rush of adrenaline subsiding, I found myself wandering through this forgotten room, searching for clues to uncover the truth behind Emily's fate. Why was she trapped? The space felt stuck in time. The rust of old instruments and the dust of forgotten lives seemed to weigh heavily on me. My fingers grazed over the cold metal of a gurney. I had to find something, anything, that could explain what was happening. Then, my gaze landed on an open medical file lying on a nearby table, oddly pristine within the decay surrounding it. With trembling hands, I picked it up and began to read. "Emily Carter," it started, detailing the arrival of a young woman fading into despair, haunted by the same whispers I had encountered. It mentioned treatment protocols and a looming sense of dread among the staff regarding her condition. I flipped through the pages, heart racing as I read about her vivid descriptions of shadowy figures and haunting voices long before her time in the hospital. "Help me, and I'm not alone," echoed in my mind like a cadence. That realization hit me hard. Emily's plea wasn't just a cry for help, it was a distortion of the past, lingering in the very air of the hospital itself. But just as pieces began to click into place, the lights flickered violently again, plunging the room into darkness. I could feel the shadows creeping closer there. Whispers turning into a cacophony of rage mixed with despair. "You shouldn't have come here," they chanted. Panic set in, and I darted toward the door, desperate to escape the spiraling chaos that threatened to overwhelm me. I threw myself against it, and to my disbelief, it swung open this time, revealing a corridor bathed in a soft, eerie glow. But the oppressive darkness was too close, too insistent, the whispers begging me not to leave Emily behind. "Help her!" I felt it coursing through me, the weight of each soul trapped in this hospital. Realization dawned, sharp and terrifying. I couldn't save Emily alone. Whatever darkness was chasing me, whatever shadow had captured her, needed to be confronted. But did that mean I would have to face it? I stepped back, glancing at the way I had come, the path rewinded in memories of Emily's desperate expressions. Her haunting plea echoed in my heart as I ventured down the hallway, caught between the lure of darkness and the whisper of hope. I had made my choice. I would uncover the truth. I would find Emily. I would expose whatever had held her in that hospital, even if it meant facing the very shadows that called my name. As I tread quietly along the corridor of whispers, I knew I was not alone in my fight, but the outcome remained unclear, a blurred line between the realms of the living and lost souls waiting to be freed. And despite the endless whispers and unanswered questions, I held tightly to the silver bracelet on my wrist, a silence echoing against the chaos, the final connection that reminded me there was still a chance to help Emily.